Okay, now I will invite our beloved speaker, author who have written a lot of books, Marco Ryan, to be with us to give a keynote about the whole summit. And also, he has written a lot of books around AI for executives. So now I will invite him to make a kind of very specific addressing about AI ethics. Over to you, Marco.
Thank you very much, and hopefully you can hear me. I'm just going to quickly share.
Yes, sir.
Okay, hopefully you can see that. Great. So thank you for the introduction, and it's a great privilege to be here, be with you today. I'm in England, but this is a global issue that we're talking about today, and it's an issue that needs to be discussed in every corner, in every boardroom. And Sean very kindly mentioned that I've written a number of books. One, both the one on cybersecurity and the one on AI, both have dedicated chapters on AI ethics, because ethics is not something really that is an option, and we'll come on to that a little bit more. But I'm just going to share a couple of stories, a couple of insights, some tips, and we'll start with. I'm going to take you back probably about 8 years to Helmand Province in Afghanistan, and I want you to picture a British general surrounded by international staff with an American drone overhead. And that drone has lethality, it has lethal force. And they're looking at a road similar to this. And in the middle of this road, this is a road that's had quite a lot of activity from the Taliban over the preceding months, quite a lot of IEDs, quite a lot of incidents. And it's therefore a main supply road, and it's therefore of real interest to the general and his staff. And they're watching two figures digging, clearly planting an IED in the middle of the road. And the pressure is on for the general to provide that authorization. The forces still require human in the loop for lethal force. There is still the concept of accountability that needs to happen when lethal force is used. And so as the seconds are ticking away, the staff is becoming increasingly frantic and increasingly putting pressure on the general to give the order. But for some reason, he waits. Now, you could call it experience, you could call it gut feel, you could call it insight, but for some reason he waits. And as the seconds tick down to the very last second where he could authorize lethal force, the two figures get up, put their bucket and spade in their hand, hold hands, and skip back to their house on the side of the road. Two young children innocently digging and playing in the sand. Now, had the general gone with the algorithm, because the algorithm said this is appropriate, if he'd gone with the pressure and the people, the data saying this is needed, this is required, the moral, the legal, and the ethical ramifications of that would have been significant, not just to the two young children, but also, of course, to the general and to the forces then in Helmand Province. So this is a good example of where the human in the loop, the idea of judgment, of slowing down, of making the right decision for the right reasons. We're under a lot of pressure with AI to race, to rush to make decisions. There is pressure that everything coming out of AI is good enough. It beats the 80-20 rule. It's good enough. But I think that judgment trumps algorithms. This is about humans determining what AI can and cannot do. And it's really, really important to reflect on this today, to keep in mind the power of human decision. So I think that your algorithm is your values scaled. Your algorithm is your values scaled. Just think about that for a moment. What does that really mean? Well, if you are racing to put something out quickly, that you're rushing decisions, that you're compromising your corporate, your personal values, it'll end up effectively resulting in whatever product or solution, piece of research, whatever it is that you do. Every line of code reflects decisions that have been made about what matters. They're choices that have been made or not made. And if you're abrogating that responsibility to AI to write that code, then you've got to be absolutely sure that the guardrails which you're providing, the decisions that you're doing, is spot on. Because if you don't, you then end up with this confidence gap. And this confidence gap happens because about 75% of solutions at the moment, that the executives, the leaderships, the teams, and I'm talking from academic to government to pure tech, everywhere. So about 75% feel that their systems are objective or objective enough, but only about 20% are actually checking, can actually prove, actually have an audit trail that says this is the case. And that confidence gap is really dangerous because it obviously creates a level of false hope and false promise. So let me give you an example. A large bank, a large multinational bank, originally based in Asia, now largely based in Europe, had created a fraud detection system using AI. And it was amazing. It beat the previous fraud detection system by 50% improvement. The trouble was, and it got a lot of plaudits, and as a result of that, people were really interested in it, including the regulators. But the trouble was that when the regulators came to ask to understand how the decisions had been made to encode and what guardrails were provided, nobody, nobody could stand up and say, yeah, I took that decision or that accountability. So just having a working system isn't good enough. And just having being able to unexplain your decision is certainly not good enough. So what values are you encoding without really realizing it? What everything that you are doing, everything that we are looking at, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a policymaker, whether you're a military general, whether you're in high tech, whether you're in university, whatever it is, everything you're doing, you're making these choices right now. So next time you do a sprint planning or you have a board meeting or your hiring algorithm is being tweaked, next time you're looking at what recommendation you're going to put out, those decisions, they feel technical, but actually they're ethical. And that requires some strong leadership because these are human foibles that we are encoding. These are human issues, human problems. And, there is as we've seen, I think, particularly in Silicon Valley, there's a bit of a gold rush. I mean, they had their first gold rush 100 odd years ago. There's a new one, which is really around, being the first with some form of AI that does something that's unusual or different, right? And there are a lot of corners being cut. And those corners are ethical corners because there isn't the rigor. There isn't, I mean, the amount of data that has been scraped or included into large language models that has not had proper scrutiny or has not had approval or is proprietary and has been taken is extraordinary. So there is a real need to do this. So ethics is something that cannot be retrofitted. This is not something that you do at the end, that you clean up like a mop to sort problems out because you've got caught, right? You need to make sure that you're not saying, oh no, we didn't intend it to do that. That's not what we hoped it would do. You need to have that accountability. So building your ethical frameworks, is important. Another bank, this time in the UK, has a ethics panel that sits at the front end of every single decision to prioritize or invest in a product or a solution. It cannot go through unless they've had a decision and the dev team, the product manager have told them what the likely implications or consequences of that particular solution is. Ethics cannot be retrofitted. This is something you need to plan and do right up front. And of course, the trouble is that often values are being trumped by velocity, right? It's about pace, getting there first. Never mind, we'll sort it out later. We'll sort it out when we get caught, if we get caught, if there's a problem. That's a very sort of pure tech, high tech play. So what we're seeing then is that whistleblowing happens when guardrails fail. Okay, we know that prevention, right, beats damage control. We know that root causes need to be sorted out, not the symptoms. So choices you're making now determine whether somebody later risks everything to tell the truth. And that's unfair. That's not appropriate. We have seen today the true cost of that whistleblowing. So better guardrails prevent the need for somebody to actually brave somebody to be brave and to speak up. We need to get rid of that need to have people to whistleblow, because it shows you that the front end, the leadership, is lacking. There are multiple frameworks out there. This is one I think that came from memory from Stanford. It's a very simple red, amber, green kind of approach, but looking at it and saying there are consequential decisions that need to be made, and these are typically ones that affect people. So where it might be about hiring or credit control or healthcare or anything else that is people focused, those are consequential. Those need really, really strong ethical guidelines around them, because if not, you'll end up with reinforcing your bias. Amazon did this when they had their original hiring algorithm, right? They trained it on data that was basically looking backwards, that looked at all the male people that they'd hired. As a result, the algorithm worked perfectly, but the bias was built into the data, which said basically we don't hire females. So that's not, I mean, it's now been solved, but make sure that when you're doing consequential decisions that you're removing bias and you're clear about the policies you're encoding. And things then which are amber, that require real oversight and real judgment, are influential. They're not determinative systems, but they're influential. And of course, there are things like, things that have some form of limited impact or potential, even if they fail. That's fairly easy. They require less guardrails. So I want to leave you really with kind of 3 questions and one final thought. And the 3 questions really are these. Can you explain this decision to somebody that's affected by it? What values are you encoding at scale? And who's accountable when this goes wrong? Because AI won't be the one in court, right? It's going to be a human. And if you can't answer those questions clearly, or if you're in a meeting and someone's pushing you and you're feeling pressure and you challenge them with these questions, if they're not able to answer those questions clearly, you should not be proceeding, because clearly there is an issue that needs to be resolved. So build these guardrails into your development processes, not your cleanup processes. And finally, one for reflection really for today. The question isn't whether AI will make consequential decisions. It's whether you'll be comfortable defending how you taught it to decide. And so the choices you make in your next sprint, or in your next board meeting, or in your next research, or in your next policy, whatever it might be, will those prevent the need for somebody to risk everything later and blow the whistle? So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much. If you want to stay in touch, delighted to. If you want to continue the conversation, delighted to. Shan, over to you.
Thanks a lot. I think it was a great presentation. Thank you for taking time out of a busy schedule, Marco. And really pleased to hear a lot of your thoughts in the considering the current times, how it is very important. Okay, I'm going to